Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday, the Leading Change episode this week with Avipaul Bhandari. Hey Avi, welcome back.
Hello.
So Avi, Wednesday is Change Leadership Day. And of course, this is all about understanding how to communicate direction, how to help teams and organizations really take the necessary steps towards that direction. And there's a lot of leadership work for us as Scrum Masters. Sometimes it's not organizational change. It might be a personal or team level change. But tell us the story of a change process you were involved with and walk us through the steps, the steps from beginning to end. And as you go through those steps, highlight for us the tools, the tips, the tricks, and the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
Sure. Happy to. Just thinking back, there's an example. It was a group level change. So it was about 3 teams. So not a massive organization. I think there were about 30 people in all. But I think some of the concepts I learned there are applicable on a wider scale as well. And so I joined this group. They didn't have, in terms of the teams, the day-to-day, they had some structure. They were using some tools, like they had the boards, etc., and they would have stand-ups, etc. But there wasn't much more. So they're going through the motions of the day-to-day, daily stand-ups, etc., and would have, I guess, planning meetings. But they were missing retrospectives. There was a serious need of understanding how Agile works, as well as just implementing some of this stuff. Also, the team dynamics, there were some issues. One of the teams was very aggressive, for example. There were lots of raised voices, and another team was apathetic and like, hey, yeah, we'll do whatever kind of thing. Not necessarily self-motivated or driving. So there was definitely room for improvement. Prior to me joining, my predecessor had tried to implement Scrum, and they were essentially rejected by the group. We don't need that. And they became a bit nasty with that person, unfortunately.
Ouch.
So thankfully, I was warned about this coming in. It's like, hey, this is what's been done before. That's how that ended. Good luck. So that was what I was briefed before I joined. And the goal for me and what I was asked was to actually improve their Agile implementation. As I observed them and their stand-ups, etc., I thought, okay, they need to improve their Agile knowledge to help them adopt the Agile practices. We need to improve team dynamics, particularly like soft skills and them understanding each other. There was a need to improve the dynamic between the product owner and the team. I would say the dynamic wasn't particularly healthy. The product owner had assumed leadership, and the team, I think, felt a bit resentful for this dynamic. The stakeholders, they didn't have the best relationship with the stakeholders. And when I say best, I mean healthy. Like, they got on with them, but it was a case of the stakeholders knew who to come to directly when they wanted extra work done on the side, for example. So that was the situation going in. So I would observe, obviously, within the stand-ups, etc., and there's a lot of information that surfaces there. But what I did initially was also set up one-to-ones, which I will say is useful for Scrum Masters and Agile coaches in any context. And that really helped me understand unfiltered frustrations. So what was surfacing in the one-to-ones is information that wouldn't surface in the team meetings, for example. And there was some there was a lot of honesty there, and there was a lot of frustration in those one-to-ones, and that just kind of reinforced some of my initial observations. But hearing it directly from people was, quite moving, because you got to see firsthand how people were affected by the situation that they were in, and you also got to hear their frustrations as well. So that's an element of what I did, and I can talk more about the one-to-one specifically. But I kind of immediately recognized they needed a bit of training, so to speak. And the way I like to operate is some initial training sessions just to plant the seeds, not to say this is how we're going to work now, but just to introduce concepts to the teams. And so they were using Kanban. So I thought, okay, well, if you're using Kanban, let's actually talk about Kanban. And so I went through some workshops with them and on how Kanban works and why it is the way it is, and why it's important to limit WIP and manage your flow, etc., which was really interesting. There was the way the teams responded to that was quite different. One team was like, hey, this is great, let's do all of this now. And another team was like, you had an individual shouting at me saying, why are you telling us this? Are we not working hard enough as it is? So I was dealing with that. So that was fun. But that at least enabled me to introduce the concepts and to talk about retrospectives, which was interesting as well. So I couldn't, for one of the teams, I couldn't actually implement normal retrospectives because they just saw them as being too long and can't we get on with some real work. But I emphasized the need to be able to self-reflect and improve upon themselves. I said, you're doing a great job, but we've all got room for improvement, right? So what I proposed, because they were quite negative and cynical, I proposed a pain points meeting instead, where I asked them to list their main pain points and prioritize them. And instead of like an hour-long retrospective, we had like a half-hour pain point session, which, funnily enough, they agreed to scheduling weekly. And that's
better than the bi-weekly retrospective right there.
There you go. So that they responded really well to that. So that was a way to have...
So you kind of understood their language to talk about what retrospectives are supposed to help us talk about, right? Like, of course, pain point is just one perspective, but it's a very important perspective of the retrospectives as well.
That's right. And that's what that's what resonated with them. The team, as they were at that point, they didn't really care about celebrating their successes or being nice to each other or about themselves. It was like, hey, what's causing us issues, and let's fix that. So they responded very well to that. Now, if you fast forward 6 months, someone else joined the team and said, hey, these pain point sessions are good, but why are you not doing proper retrospectives? And so that worked well. So they transitioned eventually, which was great. So there was the whole, introducing concepts, and I say planting the seed. And what would happen is, when they felt as though, say, for example, we're working on too many things. Hey, Avi talked about limiting WIP. Let's try that. It's like, great, let's do that. But it was them making the decisions, not me. I just introduced the concepts. The issues with the team dynamics. So I worked with L&D on
learning and development.
Learning development, yeah. So we had a great team internally, and so I would book these all-day events with the teams, just for like an all-day team offsite where we'd talk about what we were doing and our goals for the quarter, etc. But also we'd have workshops which were run by L&D, and they would cover lots of things like different personality types, dealing with personality types, dealing with stakeholders, how to deliver feedback. And what that did was it just helped people become more aware of each other and each other's working styles and communication styles. And that did lead to that, plus I would say a combination of that and the one-to-ones, where I would feed back to individuals who may have been a bit more aggressive, but also understanding why they were aggressive. The combination of those two things really helped to improving the team dynamics. And I was very honest. I talked openly about psychological safety and what good looks like in terms of happy teams and the importance of enjoying yourself at work and creating an environment which is pleasant for everyone. So I was just wearing it all on my sleeve. I was saying, this is the goal that I'm hoping to achieve. Again,
but you were not pushing, right? Like you were just talking about it to create awareness, and you were letting the team find what was the next right step for them.
Exactly. And some people resonated. For some people, that resonated a lot. What I would say is the more junior members of the team, particularly the more aggressive team, they felt as though that was a good opportunity for them to be heard. So they were mostly quiet during the meetings before that. But then, I don't know if you remember how Google were talking about psych safety when they introduced it in Project Aristotle. It was equality and conversational turn-taking. So that's what resonated with them. It's like, actually, yeah, I should get a chance to contribute to these conversations because I've got ideas as well, right? So that, in combination with the one-to-ones, where because I was observing everyone within the context of the day-to-day Scrum events, not only was that a coaching conversation, but it also, and I'm sure all the coaches will scream when they hear me say this, it was combined with an element of mentorship, because I was observing them day to day, for example, and if people were having difficulty in contributing to conversations, that's something that we would talk about in that context. And they would then ask me for advice on what they could do to help them. So that would surface there, and I would ask for feedback as well. It's important as leaders to be humble, and I would sometimes offer scenarios where I thought I hadn't been as effective as I had hoped to be, and so I would say, hey, when I did this, what are your thoughts on that? Oh, now that you mention it, yeah, you could have. Yeah, that could have been a bit smoother. I was like, okay, great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that feedback.
Modeling receiving feedback, which of course is one of the key tools we have in our work, modeling the behaviors that allow our teams to succeed.
Exactly. All too often we work with leaders who just would not want to admit to making any mistakes, which I think is a huge, huge issue that we have. But then I also would give feedback to the more aggressive members of the team and try to show them empathy and understand why they were frustrated and where they were coming from. And that would vary depending on the individuals, but also understand their frustration and showing that you understand their frustration, but then also showing them the impact of what they're doing and how that was impacting and preventing others in the team from speaking up. And potentially even saying, you're a senior member of the team, this person's new, wouldn't it be great if you help them and help mentor them, etc.
Absolutely. And these small interventions can really trigger things to move forward, right? Like this, showing the concepts, letting the team decide what step they want to take next, involving HR or L&D to come in and bring some of those soft skills that you had observed were missing. Learning about feedback by practicing it and being open to receiving feedback and modeling that behavior. It's a great set of tips for introducing change. Thank you for sharing that, Avi.
No worries.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.